Hello, it sure has been a while. Welcome back to another Professor of Thrones video. It's me, the Professor of Thrones. Yeah, as I do after every show season that I cover, I try to take a long break from the channel and try to, focus on my other creative pursuits, such as my novels and my vlogging channel, which I will link in the description below as well. And yeah, I try to spend time on that and take a break from, the Song of Ice and Fire or House of the Dragon content creation kind of sphere. But, sometimes in between show seasons, ideas sort of rattle in my head and I kind of want to execute them. So that brought me here today to record my definitive ranking of all of the House of the Dragon characters. Now, I was debating whether I actually wanted to do this list or not simply because the show is not complete. And also, I have the position of having read the book Fire and Blood, which the show is based on, to its completion, and that book concludes the story of a lot of these characters. So I know where a lot of these characters and their character arcs are going. So I was, a little weary about making this tier list, but I decided, hey, you know what? I would like to make it anyway. And in order to do that, I have to come up with some rules and caveats and sort of customizations to the ranking here. So my rules is I am ranking this completely as of the end of season 2. All this is taking into account is seasons 1 and 2 of the TV show. I will try my best not to let what I know of characters in the future influence how I will rank them in terms of the show, just based on what I know from the book. So because of that, I sort of made a tier here called Waiting on Further Seasons / Would Spoil Books. So if I'm not comfortable fully ranking a character yet, which I'll try to use sparingly, I'll try to rank my characters based on best of the knowledge I have from the seasons. But if I really feel that my bias would be just too strong from having read the book, I will rank them here. So yeah, so that's one of my caveats. I will try my absolute hardest not to include any book spoilers in this video. So if you are a show-only watcher, feel safe to watch this video still. I won't be mentioning any plot events that happen in the future of the books. I can hint at them. I think hinting is fair. I will only hint, though, if there's evidence toward that in the current seasons. So, like for example, when I talk about Rhaenyra has done some kind of sketchy shit so far. Do you, just based on media literacy, do you think she will do more or less sketchy shit as time progresses, So, things like that I might hint at, but overall I will not be giving any spoilers. Yeah, so I think that's about, the rules and stipulations here, basing purely on the seasons that are out of the show. If I feel I cannot fully create a ranking without, spoiling book or keeping book in account, I will put it here. And so the other custom tiers I did, instead of doing S tier or God tier or whatever, I did best in all fiction, which is something I carried over from my ranking of all the Song of Ice and Fire book characters, in which if a character is one of my favorites in all of fiction, I think is one of the best written ever, I will put them in this best of all fiction tier, which is reserved for the greatest of the great. You'll know that section was very limited, but I would say out of any author ever, George R. R. Martin has probably written the most of these. So, yeah, and otherwise, as you can probably tell, this is not a scripted video like my usual content. This is more of a free form, from the heart, on the spot kind of thoughts and speculations, or not speculations, thoughts and opinions, There we go, just an example there. So this is going to be a loose off-the-cuff video. Don't expect, any really well-edited, clear, written thoughts. So anyway, let's start by immediately making cuts of what I will put in not ranking. And as I go, I will be stating who I will not ranking, which is, dragons. They're not characters. I know they have some personality, but I do not feel they should belong on a character tier list. If you disagree, I quite frankly don't know what to tell you. I don't know how you could be ranking dragons on a on a character. Some people do it, obviously, because this list exists. The The other thing I will be cutting is duplicates. So there's obviously a lot of time jumps in this show. If a character is listed twice here, I am not going to rank them twice just based on that current state they are in that part of the show. I will just, move them to this list. So that's, oh no, that's the farthest we get with Lucerius, actually. Sorry about that. Okay, any duplicates here? No. Yeah, this is our Blackwood character, so I will put him in not ranking because he's a duplicate. Another dragon that I missed. Young Aegon. Young Aemond. Young Alicent. Young Helena. One of the young kids. Young Lena. Young. Oh my god. Laenor. Waking out his name. One of young Rhaena or Bela. I can't remember which is which because they were in like half of one episode. Is he Boros? Is he the same character? I'm gonna say, yeah, I think he's implied to be young. Well, no, because he has gray hair here and he is brown. I'm gonna say he's a separate character, and we'll leave him at that. Former Lord of Storm's End. That's Lucerius, young either Bela or Rhaena, young Rhaenyra. Okay, it seems clear of duplicates there. I was considering doing this before I started recording, but I thought I wanted to show the thought process of how I'm determining that. It's Aegon, the Cribble. I should have probably mentioned, if you made it this far and didn't realize that, this will have full spoilers for seasons 1 and 2 of the show. If you're not caught up, don't watch this video. Like I said, though, to reiterate, it will not have book spoilers. Okay, now let's start list proper with Aegon II. One more caveat I will give is that I am ranking based on their writing, the quality of their writing, not my personal preference of the character. So, for example, I will use him as an example. I will move him up here. Oh my god, I'm having such brain fog today. Oh my, Kristen Cole, God, it's taken me a second. I've been working all day, so this is a long work day, so my brain's a little foggy. But yeah, Kristen Cole, yeah, for example, I despise this character. I hate him so much, but you have to admit he is incredibly written. He is like the most like textbook like example of like perfectly written like meninist incel character, not an incel, but like meninist character. Like, and like classic Elliot Rodger type character, and like he just feels so real in that sense. Like you could just see him in all of these like disgusting real life meninists that are out there, and like the thing that makes him so fascinating is that like he's a real problem, just as these people are real problems today. You like to make fun of them, you like to like we all love to make fun of Kristen Cole, we all love to make fun of real people that like him, but he is a real problem as in universe, and people like him are real problems IRL. And I think George did an incredible job commentating on like the real world effects of how someone like this can cause detrimental impact. Like, think about it, he's like actions he took based on his skewed sense of honor and like his like deep-seated misogyny, like really actively harmed the lives of so many people on this list. And he just is so real and so tangible, so I have to put him in high tier, and people are gonna just not watch the video and look at this list and be like, how could you put Kristen Cole in high tier? He's such a horrible person. That's exactly why he's in high tier, because he's so well written. Anyway, Now let's move on to the list proper. Aegon the Second, fascinating character. Sorry, my mouth gets dry. I'm gonna be taking some sips of beverage while I talk. Yeah, Aegon the Second, absolutely fascinating character. I think he serves as the perfect duality to Rhaenyra, in that Rhaenyra is someone that is trying to do good and trying to instill what's right, but sort of problematic and messed up behavior is seeping in. And I think Aegon is the exact parallel of that, where it is someone that is, due to a life of trauma, I will say, due to a life, despite immense privilege, just literal, tangible trauma, is someone that is incredibly problematic and poorly behaved and a really rotten human being. And as opposed to Rhaenyra, where that kind of behavior is sort of seeping slowly seeping in through her goodness, this is the opposite, where it's some tendrils of goodness and kindness and compassion and care kind of seep in through the villainy. And I'm not going to spoil his arc or progression in the book, but I will say it is fascinating to see where that goes and where the character ends up. So I'm also going to put Aegon in high tier. I think he's incredibly well written. Aemma Arryn, I would say not enough screen time / I'm gonna make this a slash as plot vehicle. She's in, was it the first 10 minutes of the first episode? She is definitely a plot vehicle for the development of she's a vehicle for the character development of Viserys and Rhaenyra. She's a vehicle for the character development of Daemon, and she's a vehicle for progressing the plot forward, and that's about it. Aemond is an incredibly interesting character in that he, is someone who grew up in the same circumstances as Aegon, but worse, in that Aegon was, horribly neglected, when he was given attention. It was only negative attention. He was never given positive attention from family. He was given, but however, Aegon was given a lot of positive reception from peers and, people around, and was propped up. And Aemond had none of that. Aemond was given, neglect and from his family, and when he did get attention, it was all negative, and also was incredibly poorly treated and bullied by a lot of peers and people his age and the society. So it's kind of the worst of both worlds of what Aegon experienced, and because of that, he turns into a vastly different character than Aegon. And I think the duality of the two, and add Helena to that as well, showcase what that kind, the sort of the way children come out from that kind of parenting and upbringing. And Aemond's so interesting because you keep wanting to sympathize with him. He is a victim of horrendous bullying as a child and grows up into become a bitter, vengeful, enraged, school shooter-esque type figure. And that's something that George R. R. Martin does really well. A lot of these people in this series are very analogous to different types of people in our society today. And he becomes that kind of figure. However, you still want to root for him, and you still, for a while, you really try to understand where he's coming from. Yeah, he really would be a better, you think, oh, maybe he would be a better king than Aegon. Maybe you kind of want him to see him slip in there and kind of maneuver his way in. You want to see him succeed until you don't. Until it crosses that line where it becomes irreversible, and then you say, okay, I could sympathize with someone all they want for the horrible experiences they had, but if they do truly horrible things, there's no real lingering of that sympathy. You can't really, stick with them anymore. And I think that creates us a fascinating character. And, they're also incredibly hot. I will say that as well. So I will put them in high tier as well. See, we're getting a lot of high tiers. And now we get Alicent Hightower. I Alicent is such an interesting character in that she is essentially, in a way, a show original character, because the Alicent of the book is nothing like the Alicent of the show. For context, in the book, Alicent fills a very different role in the story. She's someone who, married, like the same kind of dynamic where she married Viserys, not really in her will, wasn't really her choice, but she married Viserys and ended up having children with him, and felt this immense loyalty toward that children, and because of and eventually tried to prop them up. But here's the thing: she had no like deep friendship, like slash subtextual romantic relationship with Rhaenyra like she does in the show. No, in the book, she is, I think, 10 years older than Rhaenyra, maybe more, and she actually like really fulfills the evil stepmother trope, where she comes in, has her own children with Viserys and tries to prop them up, more so than tries to sort of push Rhaenyra out, and she, she fulfills the evil stepmother trope that like is the, and there's really not a lot of sympathy that you can have for her in the book. She's a very, she starts off kind, but she's a very villainous character overall. And I think the show making the decision to age her down to Rhaenyra's age and make them, childhood best friends slash potential romantic, romantic partners, and have that incredible subtext and that incredible character dynamic makes the show way more interesting than the book, even George R. R. Martin's book than that was. And George R. R. Martin fully admits this. He admits that the creation of this dynamic and aging down was a great decision that he wished he had done himself. So it's not like something that he disapproves of, and I think it creates all the more, makes the character all the more stronger. So when I'm looking at this, I'm definitely looking at the show character. All to say, definitely looking at the show character as opposed to the book character. Show Alicent is an incredibly fascinating character. It is someone that, unlike Rhaenyra, Rhaenyra was always rebellious. Rhaenyra was always had privilege thrust upon her. Didn't really have to work for it. Alicent is someone that, Rhaenyra is someone that, got to rebel, got to, be poorly behaved, got to try new things, got to, go against the wishes of, everyone else. Alicent is someone that tried to follow it to the T, believing that if you are a rule follower and if you are someone that, ascribes to the order of things and progresses, that you will, be rewarded. And the tragedy of her character is that she does this for so long, and, she's almost punished for it over and over again. It's like someone that like is taught all her life. She's a religious person. She's like highly religious toward the faith of the Seven. She's someone that is brought into an incredibly patriarchal environment in terms of being really used as a tool by her incredibly misogynistic father, and also being groomed and forced married to, the king, an old man, an older man, and being forced in this environment and essentially, sucking it up and taking it for years and years and years until she comes to realize, she starts slipping, in season 1 when she has the confrontation with Rhaenyra after Rhaenyra's children, essentially disfigured Aemond, her son, and Viserys was more mad at Aemond in that side for, for questioning, the parentage of Rhaenyra's children than actually the physical harm that he underwent. And that's when she starts to break, when she goes after Rhaenyra in that one sequence. But the full breaking happens in season 2 when, after, Aegon is, loses his capacity to rule, and Alicent has to essentially she essentially assumes that she will be, oh, she'll be regent, and then again she's stepped over, and she's completely ignored and disregarded. Everything she's worked for all this time is just completely thrown out, and she just starts to, change and starts to break and starts to realize that, oh my god, like, this person I've been working so hard against all along is maybe right all along, and maybe I should, maybe I should let them win. Maybe this is all for nothing. And all's to say, I think you know where I'm going with this. Alicent is one of the best characters ever written. I think she far surpass, and this is something me who thinks George R. R. Martin is the greatest writer of all time. She far surpasses the version of Alicent that George R. R. Martin written, and I think it was an incredible decision to make her how she is in the show. I'm gonna rank Eric and Ark together. I think they're, a really, interesting dynamic, having these two twin brothers that grew up together and joined the Kingsguard around the same time, and essentially two brothers of the exact same circumstance that, in the exact same order and the exact same rules that they have to follow, that are divided by war and divided by this conflict and forced against each other by this conflict, because both genuinely feel that this is what they're supposed to be doing. As Kingsguard, they both, one of them believes that they each believe that they are following the rightful king and doing what is right, and it turns them against each other to the point where they end up, obviously, as we saw, killing each other. And I think, I wish they were explored more. And, in the book, they're, and it seeps into the modern Game of Thrones / Song of Ice and Fire series, they're considered like, a legend almost, and they're like very legendized in the book. But, for the character work that the show did, I think they're solid. I wouldn't say that they're anything like amazing like we get in high tier best of all fiction, but I would put them at mid tier, and I'll rank them together. Okay. I will also, for now, rank... Where's Rhaena? Baela and Rhaena together. I don't know what the show is doing with them, and I don't want to rank them based on the book, because this is a show ranking. There are characters that the show removed that I will not go into them here, but I've talked about it in my videos, breaking down the episodes. There are characters that the show removed that I think they're trying to give Baela and Rhaena the roles of. So I don't want to rank them simply based on what they do in the books, and they haven't really done much of anything in the show yet. So for now, I'm going to put both of them in waiting for further seasons / would spoil books, because we really don't know. We really don't know where their characters are going at this point stage in the series. And that's kind of a flaw, I think they should have been doing more up until this point, and I think it would have made them more interesting and likable. Like, Rhaena's plot thread in season 2, like, no one really cared about it, and everyone thought it was filler, essentially, because it was so unclear what they were doing. Oh, spoilers, they were taking another character and trying to combine that character's book story into Rhaena's. But all's to say, I think we gotta wait and see more before we rank them properly. And yeah, that does mean I should probably, do some sort of re-ranking of this once the show is over, and I most definitely will do so. Anyway, we got Corlys here. Corlys is a very interesting character because they are someone, and I would say, like, where's Rhaenys? I'll rank her in succession. I mean, they're two peas in the pod after all. Is Rhaenys not here? Am I just totally missing her? Oh, there she is. I was like, yeah, okay. So Corlys, very interesting character in that, he has a very, likability, a lot of likability to him, a very charming personality. He's had incredible accomplishments in his life exploring, and we don't really go into this much in the show, but, like, he explored pretty much the maximum extent one can of the known world, and so few people do that. And this was before he became a man of immense privilege. Like, the Velaryons were a somewhat higher in house just because they come from Valyrian heritage like the Targaryens, and because the Targaryens are ruling, they're obviously going to have an inherent bias toward Valyrian like descendant houses. So, there is some privilege inherent there, but Corlys really is like largely a self-made man in that he acquired his riches by undertaking these terribly brutal hard voyages, exploring the majority of the known world, the farthest reaches of the world that one can reach without dying, essentially, and bringing treasures and wealth and bringing resources from his land to them, and he was like very ambitious, and built this huge prominence for his house and himself, and cemented himself into the royalty through those. But for all that ambition and likability, he is a deeply flawed person. He is really deep down, he's just like, he really is bogged down by politicking. He tries to marry off his 10-year-old daughter to a 50-something-year-old man. So and that's fucked up. And also, of course, he is, especially after his wife's death, is incredibly neglectful to his granddaughters. He is incredibly neglectful to his bastard children, tries to, push them under the rug. Even when they knows they're having unfortunate lives, he just ignores them and chooses not to prop them up, even if his wife wishes that he did, So he's a deeply flawed person. However, does he reach the heights of, these three up here? I wouldn't say so. He's incredibly interesting. I might put him up here for now. We can always change our minds. Rhaenys, a lot of similar things where she does a lot that makes her likable. However, just because like a lot of the similar reasonings, I mean, they're in their power couple. There's a reason they're together. They're very similar people. She's more interesting in that she was completely passed over and set aside. She was, if there was no sexism in society, she would 100% would have been heir to the throne and would have been king instead of a queen, instead of Viserys being king. And I think because of that, she ends up seeing a lot of herself in Rhaenyra, and perhaps that's why she's so critical and like condescending toward Rhaenyra early on, because she sees herself and is like, there's some sort of resentment there, like why should she get like what I was passed over for? And slowly, she eventually turns around and comes to realize, what, if I'm resentful for what I was passed over for and everything, I shouldn't be belittling toward the person and resentful toward the person that is sort of getting that. I should be supporting them at all costs because I want a future which someone like me would not have been passed over. And that climaxes with the end of her life, in which she completely sacrifices herself to her life for Rhaenyra's cause. So honestly, here's what I'll do. She goes in high tier and he goes in mid tier. I think that's fair. I didn't want to separate the power couple, but I am. Crab Feeder, not really a character, more of a plot device, just a creepy, They tried to add more character to him in the show, I think, by giving him grayscale and everything, but still really personality-less. And we got Lohar, who after one episode is probably, spoilers, already going up to high tier. And they took on the role of that Crab Feeder held in the Triarchy forces. I think it's fair to put Crab Feeder in low tier. Daemon is a character I'm incredibly conflicted on, because I hate Daemon. Daemon is probably like one of my least favorite characters in the book and the show. He just bothers me to no end. And I think it's very interesting what the show is doing in terms of revealing, and I would say this is a reveal and not a, canon divergence, because I think it seems like something George R. R. Martin would have approved of or directed, in that they're giving him, the most, purely selfish, conniving, political oriented character, a tap into the, overarching broader narrative of this world and the magic system and everything that's going on in the background over the politicking. And I think it's a fascinating twist and turn for the character, and I can see it doing a lot for explaining and justifying a lot of his, what an outsider would perceive as insane decisions later in the book. However, I think the show is, while I really like those directions for Daemon, I think the show is sort of handling him weirdly in that they're not being consistent with the development he gets. So he'll get development in one episode, he'll retract it and go back and forth. I know that's how it really work, but it just feels really weird and choppy and disconnected in the show. So I'm going to say, unfortunately, that Daemon, this is definitely something that could change. I definitely could see Daemon going up, or maybe even down, depending on how they handle it. But for right now, I'm putting Daemon in low tier. Let's breeze through some of this, because there's a lot of characters here, and we've been going for a while. So, you're gonna have to forgive me if I am blanking on side. Is he Farman? Farman Kingsguard guy. that's what I'm gonna say. I believe that's him. Who, interestingly, he was Lord Commander of the Kingsguard before Criston Cole. He was, the Green Council ordered him to kill Rhaenyra, and he adamantly refused and left the Kingsguard entirely. Cool moment. Does he do anything else in the show at all? I don't think so. So I'm just gonna put him in not enough screen time. Okay. Ideas popped in my head immediately for Helaena, even though he's first. So I'm going to talk about Helaena first. Helaena is fascinating. She is sort of the third in this triage of way characters can come out from the same upbringing with Aegon and Aemond, and she's someone so interesting is that she is, it's never outright explicitly said, and I don't think it's possible to explicitly say this because it is a show in which this concept of modern medicine is not, does not exist in this universe. But she's heavily written and implied to be autistic, and it's interesting how she perceives reality and she perceives the world in the same context that produced Aegon and Aemond, and she's essentially someone that can't really handle the brutality and politicking of being the ruling house, part of the ruling house, and being a part of a war. And she's someone that just purely, wants to live in her special interests. And fascinatingly enough, her special interest that she wants to shut away from the world and just focus on is the higher mysteries. And she is someone that has a deep connection to magic, and this is something, in the book we don't get necessarily a full glimpse of. There's definitely heavy hinting and implication, but she's not a POV character. There's no way we could really know. There's definitely heavy hinting that she's in tune with magic and has prophetic abilities, but it's really, ironed out and developed in the show. And even more so as we see toward the end of the season, it seems like her magic in a way, because she's not a POV character in the show as well, is advancing, and her skills are advancing in that front, and she's becoming an incredibly powerful practitioner of magic, in the point where she could, tap into an isolated vision that was being conveyed by a different entity, which, like, you could say the Weirwood Network and Alice Rivers, who we'll get to. But it's really interesting seeing this contrast of a character that is so, deep in, excuse me, but what matters in this world and what actually is going to be important, which is the, higher mysteries and lore, and the real threat to the world, which is, comes with the White Walkers and, all of the magical side of things, so to say. And I think it's really interesting to throw her in the mix with, characters like Aegon and Aemond, and how they bounce off of that. And I'm very interested to see where the show takes her, because she has to know what's going to happen to her, just based on everything that's happening, and I'm interested to how she's going to carry herself in the future, and see. So I think her character is heavily dependent. Like, okay, the characters I have in high, like ranked already that aren't dead yet, I think they'll most likely, for the most part, stick to their book arcs. Helena, I really don't know. Helena, I think they could go. I think they'll end it the same. Oh, sorry. But, sorry about that. But I just think that we have to see where she goes. So I'm gonna put her in. Unfortunately, I accidentally did spoil the book a little bit, but I'll put her in waiting for further seasons. Anyway, Harwin Strong. As much as I want to put him in tier, based on what we saw, how, seemed like a genuinely good person. He was always very protective of Rhaenyra. But then there's that time jump, and we kind of don't see what happened, and it's explained that, I had an affair with Rhaenyra, and, Rhaenyra's first two sons are actually his, or first three sons are actually his, while she's married to Laenor, and how he sacrifices his ability to even see with Rhaenyra, who is someone implied that he loves, and, he sacrifices that ability and eventually, loses his status and position and eventually his life, because he cared about his kids, and wanted to protect them and didn't want to see them get bullied and abused. So, he needed more screen time and development. So I want to say not enough screen time / plot vehicle, but what we did get, I really like. Maybe that means he belongs in low tier. I think he just needed more. I honestly could not tell you who this is. I couldn't tell you. I was going to say Lyman Beesbury, but Lyman Beesbury is right here. So, it is not Lyman Beesbury. Kill me in the comments. I don't care. Lyman Beesbury, I like what he did. He very similar character to Westerling. Did I say Farman before? I think he's a Westerling. In that, firmly stands up for his right. Even though he's surrounded by the pressure of the Green Council, he stands up for his right and eventually just killed for it. But I believe that might have been like one of the only scenes he was in. So not enough screen time. Jace is an incredibly interesting character in that, it's so, the interesting of, what parent it's a really like contrast of what good parenting can do, because you know he really didn't have a dad. He had Harwin, who was his bio dad, but they couldn't really be seen as a parent, like his parent, because of the obvious situation that he was born out of an affair. And he had Laenor, of course, but Laenor was obviously neglectful and wasn't an actual son, and there wasn't really a strong relationship there. So his parent was really Rhaenyra. Rhaenyra is a good parent. For all the shit we can give her, she is a good parent, and he's an incredibly respectful, polite, mature person, and I think he serves as a great contrast to Aegon in that sense, in that, this is like what happens to kids with good parents versus bad parents. However, we see in season 2 that there are some not so good positive tendencies that are seeping in, and we can see that he, despite being a good person, he still is someone that comes from an immense position of privilege, and he is a good person in this world of privilege, and one of the best in this world of privilege, but he so vehemently looks down upon anyone that is not part of that world as almost subhuman in a way, and it creates such a complex, fascinating character, because you want to be like, oh, this is a great person that you want to root for fully, and this would be a great heir to Rhaenyra. But alas, you see that the almost disgust he has for the common folk. It seems that his mission, unlike Rhaenyra, it seems like his mission is heavily, based on like a place of privilege, and believing that I'm going to, support and fight for my mother because I believe that it's her right to get this position, not because I think she would be, the best fit to rule. He's someone that is, a complete product of a monarchical society that is, despite all the good he does, he is the good that you can get out of a monarchical society, not a democratic. So I think that's fascinating, and I would put him in high tier as well. Just based on what I know of what comes in the book, I can't rank Jason Lannister yet. I think he's, a great character so far, but, he has, no spoilers, a wild journey ahead. And I don't want to rank someone who hasn't gone through, they have such a big, their arc is ahead. I would say. So I can't really rank that. So I'm going to say waiting on further seasons. Ironwood, I'm going to say not enough screen time. I don't know if we necessarily will get that, so I wouldn't put him in waiting on further seasons, because just knowing what I know and everything, I don't think he's going to be that substantive. Joffrey Lawmeth, he's a plot vehicle. He's just meant to carry the plot of that episode and for Laenor's character development. Laena, I wish she had more development. I think she needed more. I don't think we know enough about her motivations and personality. I think every time we saw her, it was brief, and it was a huge time in between, so she seemed like a completely different person each time. She went from, innocent child to flirtatious teenager to, older woman who, it's implied there's a lot going on there, and she's trying to give herself some agency in the wake of a husband who does not believe in agency for women, so there's a lot going on there, and she's very interesting, but I just don't think there's enough. I'm gonna say not enough screen time. Laenor, very interesting character. It's a tragic situation. You want to say he's a selfish person. You want to say, sure. there's some selfishness there. But he is someone who is, is queer in a time when that is not only not approved of, but not believed to be legitimate, not believed to be existing. Like, it's one thing to say to be bigoted and say this is, I don't believe in this. This is disgusting. No, I think this is disgusting. It's another thing to say, oh, it's not real. like it's another level of bigotry. And I think that Leonor tried hard for someone that was born into a society of that nature. He kept up appearances to the best of his ability. He obviously he pretended to be a father to these kids. I wouldn't say he raised them well, but he kept up appearances. He didn't he didn't try to he didn't leave the family until it was arranged with Rhaenyra. He there was a lot he could have done that he didn't, and I think he tried his best. He stayed loyal to people in his family, people he cared about, and I think that's the best you can do in this society. I think he could have been a better father for these kids, but I think there was a lot he had to deal with and a lot he had to struggle with, and I think for that reason, I think it's not justified of being a bad father, but it's it's a reason. And I will say, I'm gonna put him in mid tier. I think he fits right along with his father and Eric and Argo. I would say, I think in terms of quality of writing, I think he's very good, but I think the people in high tier are better, even better. Larys is crazy interesting character, because he is one of those kind of people, and we've all know people like this, and I've all seen other characters like this, where it's you feel like you're walking on the most fragile eggshells possible when you're talking to this person, because it's known, it's aware that everyone is pretty much aware that he's an absolute complete psychopath, and anything you do to turn him could turn him in a heartbeat. And it's one of those situations, and I think A Song of Ice and Fire is fascinating in that they have a lot of these types of characters, or a few at least, where it's these horrible psychopaths that do horrible things, yet they're kept around and enabled because sometimes the horrible things benefit those in power. An example of this is the Mountain, how Tywin kept him high ranked and deployed, even though he was committed absolute atrocities. Just because he was doing them, they would benefit Tywin's politicking. And I think Larys is very much in the same. I think he's supposed to be analogous to Varys and Littlefinger from the main series. I think he's that kind of figure. I would probably say I would tie him closer to Varys, and I would say his Littlefinger counterpart is Mysaria. I think they're definitely supposed to be parallel and analogous. I think and there's also some sympathy there, and when you see how he is sort of almost relating to Aegon in a sense. You see some genuine emotion kind of seep through there, and it's so cleverly done because of how much of a psychopath he is, or a sociopath, you could say. I'm not 100% sure which, but you never really know. Is it genuine, or is it an act to try to manipulate Aegon? And the fact that Alicent, was getting a lot of benefit from using Larys, and then she quickly realized, I can't get rid of this person, because the second I do, they're going to do everything that we conspired to do. He's going to do it right back to me. He has no loyalty. He, he's just floating from situation to situation to try to, appease his, whatever his messed up agenda is. And I think, without getting into any spoilers of what progresses in the book, I think it's fascinating that you really don't know where he's at right now. You know, you have no idea. Like, there's points where you might be like, is he against the Green faction? Is he helping them? It's so vague, and it's so interesting to have a wild card of that nature in play. And I think George implements these wild cards for that very reason, like Varys and Littlefinger in the main series. Like, the wars in the series wouldn't really be happening, and of course we get more with Varys and the whole the whole young Griff plot, which is completely cut from the show, which is absolutely madness. It's so essential in the books. But all's to say, I'm gonna say Larys is high tier. Lionel Strong. I'm gonna put him low tier. We don't really get much out of him, We don't really get much of his personality. Was this the Maester? Looking down the list, I think this was the Maester before Orwyle. There were heavy hints of the Grand Maester conspiracy subplot. That's like heavily implied in not only Fire and Blood, but the main A Song of Ice and Fire series. They're heavily like hints, because he was treating Viserys for a while, and Viserys was getting worse and worse, and he would kind of stomp out any ideas that Orwyle had. I'll rank Orwyle next. So there's some interesting tendrils there, but there's definitely not enough that isn't theory. It's all there's not enough explicitity around his character. So I'm just gonna say not enough. Orwyle, I'm going to say waiting for further seasons. I think we can't really rank him yet. There's very interesting stuff there. I think he, it's interesting because it seems that he's not a Green faction loyalist, but an Alicent loyalist. It seems that everything he does is sort of in favor of her and a loyalty to her. And it's interesting because I feel the show will explain it. It does feel like they're building to something there, but I don't know why yet. And I would have to see why he has such a strong allegiance to Alicent before I can, after all, he's the only one who pushes for her to assume regency after Aegon's crippling, only one. And I think that means something, and I think that's important, and I think the show is doing that for a reason, because, obviously they could have had a stronger effect if they just made it so that everyone was against her and didn't push her forward. That would have been a stronger effect of the same message. I think there's a reason that they had Orwyle descent, and I think that it's building to something, so I have to wait before I can rank him. I can't rank him at all yet. Mysaria, I'm going to put in the same boat, because Mysaria, similar to, with much less, she's much more in control of herself, I think, than Larys is. I think, she does not let anyone on to her, wildcardness. Whoever she works with, they think that she's on their side. It's not like Larys where everyone is fearful. Rhaenyra genuinely believes Mysaria to be a strong ally, and we see in season 1 that Mysaria, she could say all she wants to Rhaenyra, and the audience could choose to believe that or not, but we see time and time again in season 1 that Mysaria floats to whoever will be advantageous for her goals, and she has admirable goals. She really is trying to care for the small folk and defend the peasantry from this incredibly corrupt royal system, and it's admirable goals, unlike Larys. And that's why I think she's a great contrast to Larys, where she's operating as a similar wild card role, where she can float from faction to faction, side to side, and we don't really know. There's a point where she's floating with Daemon for a little while. It seems heavily implied later that she is a lesbian, so obviously that was just for political advantage. And she even floats to Otto for a little bit, where she's like, if Otto does what I say, I'll support him in the Green faction. It's like she's very wild card. I think people are jumping very soon to assume that she is genuinely loyal to Rhaenyra. I think, it's a little, this is an insult to him. I mean, like, it's a little bit lacking in literacy of the media that you're watching if you think that she is, like, a diehard Rhaenyra loyalist. And I could be wrong. I could most definitely be wrong. The show could detract on that and go back to her being, she might, for all we know, the show could, like, do whatever they want with her plot. They can make her die a Rhaenyra, We don't really know. So I'm going to say, like, I have no idea where the show will take her versus where the book will take her. They could go with her. It's not, like, set in stone. Like, there's a lot of characters where it's like you kind of have to keep the major beat of their arc in order to, like, without spoilers. Like, for example, like, Aegon. You need to keep his story pretty much intact for the narrative of the series to work. Same with Rhaenyra, the broader story won't work if they change that. With Miss Arya, they could do anything, and it probably wouldn't reshape. It could cause domino effects, of course, but it probably wouldn't reshape, like, the whole narrative as a whole. So I think I will reserve my decisions about her where she ranks once we see more. Otto is a fascinating character, in that he is someone that, we know to be a terrible, awful human being, yet he is kept around for a while, like, for so long by, Viserys, who obviously, like, wouldn't keep, he's a good person deep down. We'll get to him, but he wouldn't keep, like, floating people around if he doesn't, like them. And there's even times we see Viserys reject him and send him away, and Otto bounces back and forth, but he always keeps bouncing back. And Otto is someone who is, and I genuinely think it's not even a self-preservation thing. I think it's a family preservation thing. I think he so deeply cares about his family that he becomes Machiavellian about it. He is so high-strung in the legacy, like high, like, thinking in the legacy and political position of his family, and the benefits that arise for his family, and he genuinely loves and cares about his family, but he's so high level in that he forgets that he has to take care of and cherish and love his family. Like he forgets the actual part of being a loving family member. He forgets what actually matters, and I think that makes him such a fascinating character. And I'm really interested to see where the show takes him, because it seems, based on the ending of season 2, it seems he is in a very different place than he, I'll just say, like, this isn't a spoiler, this is just a difference. Right now in the book, where the show left off, that point in the book, he's still in King's Landing, like with everyone else. And obviously the show left him on a very different position, so I'm very interested to see where it goes. But I feel like we know enough about his character and his motivations and, like, his, kind of tragic arc that I think we can rank him. But another thing I will say is there's heavy implication, less so in the show, I would say, maybe equal, like, they're in the book and the show, there's heavily implication that he wasn't always like this, and that it was the loss of his wife that really made him cold, because, I mean, Viserys had to, find a way to like him and, like, rise him up that much, he obviously had to see something in him, and for them to be, like, genuine friends for so long, there obviously had to be something there, for him to rise him up to such a high status, and, I think, there's something there, like, when he lost his wife, like, he just kind of broke and realized, he doubled down on his love for his family in a unhealthy, fucked up, backwards way, and it makes him such a fascinating character, so I'm going to put him in high tier. Okay, this was, couldn't pay me to remember his name. This was the, temporary boyfriend of Lenore, the one they staged the whole thing with so they can escape and cross the Narrow Sea together. Yeah, he is a plot vehicle. he doesn't really have given any personality. Oh boy. Ray Royce was all rank her right now because see, I'll do some quickies before we get into Rhaenyra right now. Ray Royce, plot vehicle, 100%. We don't really get enough of her. She has shown up to be killed. And also, it's funny, like Daemon's like insulting her, calling her like he calls her like a cow. He like talks about how obnoxious and ugly she is. But we see her; she's like not bad looking, and she seems like a cool personality person. So like what was he on? I think he's just a Targaryen purist in terms of his romantic interests, Anyway, I couldn't tell you who this is, unfortunately. Oh, they're twins. Yeah, so we often forget, and I just got confused myself, that he's a twin, and one of them is leading the Lannister army right now, and the other one is obviously on the High Council, the Small Council of King's Landing. So I'm going to say this. This is Jason Lannister. This is Tyland Lannister, and I will put Tyland back where Jason was. Vaemon's a plot vehicle. He's almost a cartoon character. I'm gonna, we've seen his full arc. I'm gonna put him in shit tier. He exists to be obnoxious. Doesn't really have a personality outside of being an obnoxious asshole, and I think it's almost cartoonish. And for a show, a book with characters with such incredible depth and nuance, he is cartoonish and has no other personality traits, so I'm gonna put it there. Let's do like a breeze through. Let's get rid of some of these people. Plot vehicle. Who? I know they're like Rhaenyra Council members, but he's the, Maester. Not enough screen time. Who? Oh, this is the Magister of Tyrosh, right? Not enough screen time. Or Pentos. That took Daemon and Lena in. Not enough screen time. Not screen time. That's the. I think they're both Bracken. Maybe he was a Blackwood. She was a Blackwood. I can't remember. Yeah, I can't remember which one was the Blackwood. It was like one sequence. Linda Massey. I'm gonna put her in waiting for her to see. It's not enough screen time, but I think she will do more later. But right now, we haven't really seen her do anything. The babies are plot vehicles. I don't know what else to say. As History of Westeros called them, the Drinking's Guard plot vehicles, and they've been sent to the wall, so they've been written out of the show pretty much. Plot vehicle using 1 second as one of the dragon tamers. Who else could we put in just plot vehicle right now? Who? Who is that? I don't know. He was one of Ulf's lackeys. Not enough screen time, I would say. I'm gonna also say not enough screen time for oh my god, why am I blanking on the name? Oh my god. Father of Darklyn, father of Stefan Darklyn. He had a cool scene, but I think overall not enough screen time to rank him legitimately. And I would also say that for Stefan Darklin. Did I put him out yet? I lost him. There we go. Yeah, he, yeah, I just don't think we get enough. There's some interesting tendrils there, but we don't get enough. Okay, I think everyone else we can talk about. So I think I'm going to, dive in here with Rhaenyra. Rhaenyra is one of the most interesting protagonists of all time, I would say. I think she is an incredibly fascinating character in that she is someone that is driven and burdened by, what she essentially believes to be birthright and purpose. An incredibly interesting parallel to Daenerys, because Daenerys is someone that, is someone that does, I would say her arc, not including the final season of the show, which, completely destroys her arc, but her arc as of now in the books and for most of the show seasons is someone that started out in a place very similar to Rhaenyra, where she believes she was scorned her birthright and is trying to, retain it back, but eventually realizes, like, I'm not going to, use what I call my birthright as an excuse. I'm going to justify that birthright by doing good and proving that I am a good ruler and person, and by, I'm going to use this platform to implement positive change. I think that's what makes Daenerys such a fascinating character, and that she, is someone that goes from, just thinking something is birthright to, or not expecting something at all, to thinking it's birthright, to essentially realizing, like, hey, I can use this position to actually do good and make the change I want to see in the world. And Rhaenyra has not hit that point, I would say, where she is realizing she can do all this good and positive change in the world. I think she's still operating from I think she is an eons better person than, those higher ups in the Green faction. 100%. I think the Black faction is definitely the more just cause as of now in the story. But I think Rhaenyra is so fascinating in that she hasn't had that revelation, that shift that Daenerys had. And in fact, the text of the show so far is starting to hint at the opposite. I'm not going to go into any spoilers of what's to come, because she has, in my opinion, one of the most incredible arcs in fiction in the book. And I would say, the show is already showing signs of, something isn't all right here in terms of her being a purely good person. She, sent all these innocent people to their death in terms of trying to chain the dragons. She is talking about plans to go burn Lannisport and, Lannisport and Old Town to a crisp to send them out, and she wasn't always like this, I mean, there was a way she ran Rhaenys over and everything like that, she had some good in her. Marrying Daemon, for example, and, she was groomed. I will say she was heavily groomed by Daemon, and, but, like, the whole thing of, like, not caring at all about what the Velaryon family would feel by staging Laenor's death, marrying someone she knows to be an asshole agent of chaos just, for gain. I don't think there's genuine romantic love there. For all the people that ship it, I think that's disgusting. You're shipping a predator with their victim, but I won't get into that right now. Anyway, and this, and her, the parallel opposite end of her love with the show's version of Alicent and everything like that, and it's so fascinating. And Kristen proposed it to her too, but the fact that she could, just abandon all of this and run away with, Alicent, and she chooses not to because she's so trapped in this burden of responsibility, it's tragic, and, like I said, without spoilers, I'd be tempted to put her in, waiting for further seasons to rank her, but I'd say my ranking now will be the same as my ranking at the end if they follow what the book happens. And all I will say about the book is that what the show tried to do for Daenerys' character arc, but failed dramatically at in the last season, like kind of what they set up there, I will say that Fire and Blood executes that kind of arc perfectly for Rhaenyra. And I think it's the best way they could have done it, and I hope the show does the same. So I'm going to put her in Best of All Fiction. Lucerys. Solid mid tier. I think he has enough personality to, put him there. I think, he, as... don't want to put him in low tier. I mean, he's not poorly written. He's just a kid thrust into a bad situation. I'll give him mid tier. Viserys, I'll spare you guys. I won't, I'll spare you guys. I'm going to say Viserys is the last character I will go on an incredibly long tirade for. The rest can be pretty quick drops. I will say. Viserys is another character similar to Alicent, in that George R. R. Martin actually came out and said the show handled him better. I think Viserys is such an interesting, flawed character because you can tell he's a genuinely good person and a genuinely good father. Conditionally. I think he is a genuinely good father to Rhaenyra, and he genuinely loves her. I think that he tries to be a good person, and he tries to be kind and compassionate. I think that he married a child. He didn't marry Lena because she was even younger, but he still married, I think she was 15 or 16 when he married Alicent. He forced her to have children for him, and then he proceeded to severely neglect those children and kind of forget they ever exist, and always kind of, never take the side of his wife that he, forced into marriage with him. And, he's really flawed in that sense. But also, his declining health and him losing his, in a way, losing himself, and the fact that he, despite, he knows he's losing himself, he knows he's deteriorating, and it's so sad and so tragic and so realistic, yet he makes one last push, one last stand to try to do good and try to, heal his family and heal and repent essentially for all the mistakes he made and heal the divisions. He realizes that he splintered in his family, and he succeeds. He really succeeds, and he messes it all up again unintentionally in his, I would say dementia delirium. He goes on about he thinks that he can't really tell anymore that it's Alicent with him and not Rhaenyra, and he goes on about his, fascination with Aegon and the Prince's Prophet and the Song of Ice and Fire, which the whole series gets a namesake for, and it's his kind of obsession, and he's so interesting in that he is the first figure, I think he's the first, I could be messing up my timeline here, but I think he's the first member of the Targaryen line that is fully removed from Aegon. Because I think Jaehaerys would have been overlapped with Aegon during his early childhood, I want to say. Aegon the Conqueror, I'm saying. So it's interesting in that he has this connection and this fascination and this the connection with this prophecy and this society of Valyria that he never knew and he never had a connection with, or tangible connection with, and he's trying to cling on to that, and he's lost. He doesn't know how to be a ruler. He wasn't taught right. He wasn't expecting to be a ruler. He was supposed to go to Rhaenys, and he's lost in that sense. He's lost in that he's divorced from his culture and trying to uphold it. And he accidentally creates so much division in his family, and in his last, his last breath, he tries to repair it, and he succeeds, and then last second he fails again. And he's just, everything, how he handled the situation with Amy, it just makes him such a flawed, tragic character. And he's one of the best ever written, in my opinion, in the show at least. In the book, he's a little less substantive. I think it's pretty much the same character, but I think the show expands on that character even more. So I would say the show version, best in all fiction. Boris Baratheon, I think we need to see more. He's not dead yet. I'm going to say the same for Adam and Alan. I think that they haven't done enough yet in the show to justify a ranking. I think that, they're really characters that will come in, without spoiling anything, they're really characters that will come into their own and do a lot in seasons 3 and 4, I would say. And they'll become characters that are definitely rankable and definitely, very fascinating and lovable. And, but I think those plot points in that development has not happened yet. So for now, we have to let them here. Both of them. Alice Rivers, I'm going to put her in the same thing because I really am interested to see what they do. The way that the show is sort of portraying her, is... In the book, she's portrayed with this heavy aura of mystery, and she's portrayed similarly in the show as well, but I will say they're going into her agenda and what she's trying to pull a lot more explicitly in the show than they did in the books. The books, it's still kept very vague, and you only see her through the interpretation of others. So, I won't spoil anywhere she goes, but, you can't really fully piece together what she's trying to do with just what's given in the book. You can theorize, and my theorization was very similar to what the show is doing, but it's not laid out explicitly, and I think the show is laying it out more explicitly, and it's very interesting and shaping up. But she has so much story to go, similar to, characters like Tylan, and Helena, like they have so much left to go in their story that I can't consciously, until I see how the show handles that, I can't consciously rank them, Blood and Cheese, they were absolutely blotched in the show. I think they were actually, interesting and competent in the book, and I think in the show they're bumbling idiots. And cartoon characters, and they totally, their performances and their execution totally ruined the sequence that was supposed to be, Blood and Cheese incident is a Red Wedding level incident that George tried to implement, and when you're reading the book, it is horrifying, and the show just makes them like bumbling cartoon characters, so I would say shit tier, of course. Cregan Stark, I am worried about. I'm worried, without spoiling anything, Cregan Stark ends up being a very important character in the book. And I think the Starks have a lot more of a role in the story than the show is giving them so far. And that's surprising. That's very surprising to me, because you would think they want to give the Starks even more, and they give them so little screen time in season 2 that I was very surprised. I think they could make it up with next season. I think they definitely could, and I think we're most definitely going to see a lot more of Cregan coming soon. If they want to even keep the story of the show close to the story of the book, we're going to see a lot more Cregan. I just wish they had given him more so far, because he should have more at this point in the story, I think, just based on, we should see more of his connection with Jacaerys. In the book, at this point, not spoiling anything, they have enough development that there is rumors that him and Jacaerys might have been, lovers, that's the level of, character that he already has at this point. And does not have that in the show yet, but I'm very interested to see what they do, because, you know, he is an incredibly important character in this story, and, you know, unless they're diverging the story completely, he will have a lot more of a presence in the next few seasons. And he's a very interesting subversion in the book of what we know about Starks and Starks to be like. And, you know, he carries that tradition and burden of the Stark line, but also has some very interesting divergences that we will get into once we're back at this list, like later in later videos. Yeah, we don't know enough about husband here. I think this is this Tabitha Frey? Or Tabitha Frey? I can't remember her name. Yeah, I just think I'm gonna say waiting for further seasons. I think, you know, the show could scrap her completely right now. I think that's a plausible route the show take just for conservation of characters and everything. But I also think the show could take more of a book route with her character and do some interesting things, and actually give her more substantive character. So I'm going to put in waiting for further seasons. Gwaine Hightower is like a treat that we kind of got in the show, in that he is not a character in the book. You know, he is just mentioned in a few offhand sentences. We don't hear about his relationship at all with the family, with his family and everything. And he's really made a character in the show, and I really, really like that. And I love his sort of descent that we see of like man of privilege, but still of neglect, you know, that slowly is being deteriorated and PTSD-defied by this war, you know. And I think I would put him in mid-tier. I think he's shaping up to be a very strong character. And I would like to say waiting for further seasons, but I just, you know, I don't know what the show will do with him. But if we only got what we get now, you know, I'm happy with the character. I would say they belong in mid-tier. Hugh Hammer is someone that we definitely have to see waiting for further seasons. His character just beginning by the tail end of the season, and, you know, he's going to do a lot in future seasons, so I can't consciously rank him. I'm going to rank Ulf, because they're the kind of the two, him, Ulf, and Adam of Hull are kind of like Adam or Alan. I always do the names of the two because they're so similar. George R. R. Martin never listened to the fucking rule that you're not supposed to have like characters with similar names in the story. He believes in more true to real life, and that's true with like societies of this nature. But like, yeah, it's kind of hard. Anyway, that triage there. You know, their stories are kind of just starting out, so we need to wait for future seasons. Ulf, I hate him right now, but based on the way he's going, like, they could stick with the book, but I'm wondering if they're going to do a subversion and make a change. And all I'm going to say without spoiling it, if you read the books, you know what I'm talking about. If they do something with Ulf and Hugh, without saying anything, that would sort of, you know, push them in a little bit of a different direction, and sort of like crisscross their stories and arcs in a way. I'm trying to say this without like giving any spoilers. I think it would be very interesting and might be a positive change that the show could make. But I don't know. I don't know what they'll do. And I think it's, you know, they definitely have not done enough in the story for us to be able to rank them legitimately yet. Okay, this is Hugh Hammer's wife. You know, you have a lot of compassion for her. You feel her plight. You feel her strife. But I just think she hasn't had enough screen time yet to be a full-fledged character. Sylvie, shaping up to be a very interesting character. We already see the starts of where she's going. We see her trying to stir the pot with Ulf for sure. We see that she's, you know, like the primarily used sex worker for Aemond, and, you know, she's sort of catering to his like intense mommy issues, but also using that to sort of like derive information. So we see the hints of I don't know why I have her here, and she should be up here too. I was putting them in the wrong place, but we see the hints at like a very interesting character emerging here, one that's very similar to like Mazaria and Larius, but like isn't there yet. So I think we can't really rank her just yet. Jane Eyre, she's interesting. I don't know if we'll have time, just for the conservation of characters and like saving space. I don't know if we'll have time in the show to even see her again. So I don't want to put her in necessarily like waiting for further seasons, because I don't think she might necessarily even show up in further seasons, which is interesting in that she is someone that you could tell is resentful about the situation and is like frustrated by the situation, but isn't taking out on people that don't deserve it. You know, she understands that Rhaena is just a messenger. She understands that, like, you know, it's not this poor girl's fault that she's been put in this situation. She's a child herself and is essentially asked to be a politician and a parent at the same time when she's like a teen, you know, and she sees the unfairness of it and sees a lot of herself probably in Rhaena. And this might be me overreading it, of course, but that's my interpretation of the character. And I think she's very interesting, and that duality makes her, like, you know, very interesting. I'd love to see more of her. And I would say she gets higher if there's more of her, but for now I'll put her in mid-tier. Oscar Tully, he's an interesting character in that he's essentially full-fledged politician already, and he's a kid, and that's a Song of Ice and Fire tends to do that, where they force kids to be politicians. And yeah, I like him a lot, but I think, you know, we have to see where he goes. I don't think there's just enough of him yet for us to full rank him. Simon Strong, MVP of the season. He's like a nothing character in the book, you know, he's just a placeholder character in the book, and that he's there, you know, to facilitate things, but doesn't really have like a tangible personality or vibe. And his vibe in the show is immaculate. It's hilarious. He added so much comedic relief. His bouncing off of Daemon is you know, is so hilarious and fun. And without giving any spoilers about which characters he might bounce off next, I'm very interested to see how that goes. I'm going to put Simon in high tier. I think he's such a great treat addition to the show that I was not expecting at all. And I love when the show does that and gives them more characters, more like Wayne, for example, was like very similar and gives them, but I think Simon Strong is probably even better in that, like a treat character that wasn't really a character in the book that they're giving like unique character to, and using this format to give them more, you know. I like that a lot. Willem Blackwood, interesting character in that, you know, he's dead, his arc is done, but he's an interesting character in that, like, there's some good there, you know, but he's so caught up in his feud with the House Bracken that he can't, you know, bring himself like into to see beyond it, you know. He aligns with Daemon, he aligns with the Black faction early. Blackwood is a very early aligner with the Black faction, but it's only for their own vendetta against House Bracken. There's no other motivation there. There's no, like, he can't really see the bigger picture. He's just so caught up, and eventually it leads to his demise. He unfairly demise because he was completely, you know, like, you know, egged on by Daemon, but like, he was still complicit in it. He still committed the war crimes that Daemon pushed him to commit, you know. So I'm going to put it, I'll put him in mid-tier. I think he's well written enough, though. I'll put him in mid-tier. Sharko Lohar. I adore Sharko Lohar. Another character that was much expanded from the book. I think they have like I think there's like a page about them in the book, I want to say, and then there's like a page explaining who they are and like kind of how they took the crab feeder's position and like what they're doing and like their new role, and that's like it. We don't really get anything about their personality. There's a character in the book named Ricarlia Rendoon, who is also part of the Triarchy fleet, and I think for conservation of characters they are combining the two, And I like that hybrid. I think it makes total sense for the conveyance in the show. I don't think they needed to be two separate characters. There's another character that has a lot of interaction with Ricario Rendoon later that I think would be very funny to see Sharko that we got in that place. I won't spoil who that character is. I won't spoil what those interactions are, but I think that would be hilarious if we got to see that executed, and I think it would be even funnier than their clash with Thailand. And I just love to see this, like, gender non-conforming character, operating and succeeding and thriving in a society, in a world that, like, so does not make room for that. And and also to see a YouTuber in probably the most biggest show ever, like, is just so inspiring for a YouTuber like me, so yeah, Sharko Lohar right now, I'm interested to see where they go, but right now, even if this was the last we ever saw them, I'll put them in high tier. So yeah, this is it. Let's go through a little bit just to wrap up here. I'm just gonna make sure I don't have any, like, and remember, if you fast forwarded to the end or just looking at the complete tier list just to see where I ranked everyone, this is by writing, not by how much I like or dislike the character. Like, if it was about like or dislike, like, there would be characters in very different places. Like, obviously, like, Chris Nicole would be an absolute shit, lowest of the low shit tier. Same with Otto, but they're, like, so well written that they have to get high tier. So it's all based on writing here. And I think based on writing alone, show writing alone, I think this is where the characters stand, in my opinion, for now. I think, and I'm excited to. We're probably, I would guess that the show is going to be 4-season, or if they choose to do different story arcs or times in history, the Dance of the Dragons part of the show will be 4 seasons, or the whole show, whatever they tried to do with this brand name, It seems like we're halfway through the story, and a lot of characters that are in waiting for further seasons take, center stage. A lot of these characters become, new main characters, if you will. So I would say, like, keep your eye out on a lot of this roster here, because they're going to rise up to be big movers in the second half of the story, which I'm really excited for. And of course in the books, if you read the book, you already know. But if you're just watching the show, yeah, I would say, like, keep your eye out on these characters. I think they're going to have a lot more story that you're not expecting. Not all of them, definitely not all of them, but, like, some of them are going to do a lot, and they're going to be much memorable at the level of a lot of these characters, I would say. So I would say stay excited and stay tuned for that. And yeah, I really stand by, like, Rhaenyra, book and show Rhaenyra, especially if the show takes the route that Rhaenyra takes in the book. I think particularly show Viserys and show Alicent, not so much their book counterpart, are, like, some of the best characters that were written. To the fact that, like, George has said show Alicent and show Viserys are better versions of the characters he created. He admitted it. So, like, George being my favorite writer, if he admits that, that's, like, crazy level guys. So I would say, like, all three of them are in my, like, top 20 fictional characters of all time, if I ever decide to do a list of that on my other channel. But yeah, overall I think this makes sense. Just based on quality of writing alone, not this is really more of an objective quality of writing list. It's not a personal preference. I would say this, like I said, this is a very different list if it's going by personal preference. Okay, I think that wraps it up. If you stuck around, thanks guys for watching. I'd love to know your thoughts in the comments below. Let me know if you like, don't just say like of course I'd love support and agreement. Of course I'd love to see that, but also, like, I'd love to see if you have a completely different take. Let me know. I'd love to, see what your thoughts are and talk about it. If you think someone should be much higher or much lower, like, let me know. I'd love to discuss it. So yeah, comments below are open, and thanks guys for watching.